Shatter, let the bodies hit the floor. Uprising Academy at 95%.
Right now with Hydra building up to this Bear Barrage so quickly.
Oh,
and asking.
Double kill in the back with the pulse bomb from the high ground. Aerial assault with that mine.
Impact se escucha de abajo gritar campeón a Sky Foxes.
Holy cow.
And after 42 consecutive losses, the Shanghai Dragons get their first win.
8 teams enter this weekend.
Oh no, Reinhardt, what are you doing?
We've got a clip with minimal information. It's time to break it down. Speed, 25%. Go, figure out what this man's SR is.
Keep fighting till it's for sure lost. Winnable! Hello and good evening to all. We are here to continue with the second match of today for this NA Contenders Trials, where we've got Group B changing up the group orders right now. I am your caster Rich right here with Possible. And my friend, we've got an interesting matchup today, don't we?
We absolutely do. A rematch at that. It's Comically Large Crosshair versus Malibu. Now, last week in Contenders Actual for North America, Comically Large Crosshair had a kind of comical dunking on Malibu, right? It was a 2-0, not particularly close, but Malibu, now they get one of their players back in, Wannabe's back in, not so much iced anymore, and they did pretty all right yesterday.
Yeah, they did. I mean, honestly, it's a good sign to see them, you know, being able to grow and develop going into this, because again, it was exactly 1 week ago today that they fought against one another. So there's a good amount of time to, you know, build your resolve and come back into this to really bring some, you know, new refined energy into this to try and take this back to Comically Large Crosshair. But, you know, Comically Large Crosshair was really, really dominating just as a whole. And one of the specific players was Fi. You made a big comment about that when we were talking about it before this cast.
Yeah, I mean, Comically Large Crosshair, it's one of those teams. I could go down the list and literally tell you why each of these players is probably the best in their role, if not one of the best in their role, in trials at least. Not necessarily contenders, but in trials for North America, right? But Fi comes into this roster, big shoes to fill, right? As Tayo and Zik both got picked up to Owl teams a while back, right? So now Fi comes into this team. He's got to fill the shoes of Tayo, and he did a pretty good job last week. Now, they had some rough matches, but as we go into this one today, I'm watching for him. I'm hoping that Fi is going to keep up the pressure because Wannabe is going to be the hit scan on the other side, right? And Wannabe wasn't in when they played last week. It was iced instead. And Wannabe played really well last week. We're already going to start off on Ilios. Ruins is going to be where we start. So if this isn't where we see Wannabe versus Fi, Widow v Widow, I don't know where is, and I don't know where else to set up a hit scan storyline.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that if they didn't come out with something of that sort, it would be absolutely appalling. Like, you have to. That's a pivotal dynamic to this map, and we see it so often. And you can already see some instant hover over by Wannabe. And like you mentioned, the fact that Wannabe is in here it's really going to change up this type of, you know, compositional awareness by Comically Large Crosshair and how they're going to be able to manage it, because they're going to be comfortable in knowing how one of the DPS play. But because of this changeup, again, with just a week ago, that could really throw them for a loop. And as these doors are open, there's the Widows. You called it.
And both teams opting for that double shield. We've seen a lot of teams, especially like over in APAC, but also here in NA Trials, experiment with the dive. No dice for these teams. They are going standard all the way across. Fly already going in. That magenta, 138, 30, 100, 0. I think that's what it is. I hope I said it right. Anyways, Fly's already making it work there.
And I mean, this side position underneath the small room is going to be a very, very viable option. There's another pick mid-air. Buck goes down. Wannabe gets some actually of their own, demonstrating that Wannabe can stick in this Widow battle as well. But now that was damage in the back line on the 5 line. The fight continues to pursue. Malibu still maintaining a lot of presence on the point, and I guarantee you Wannabe can threaten that body shot. That was easy.
Well, I mean, he still gets the fight win ultimately, right? And I gotta give credit to Wannabe because, yeah, Fi was not letting Buck play the game, and it was very flashy for him to get those 2 picks. But Wannabe takes a position around the side and just focuses on the team fight, right? So he applies a lot of pressure on the Tidro, and that is the opening there. Fi wins his first Widow 1v1 now, though, so it's rough for Malibu to hold on to this. Razor getting picked helps because that's a lot of his team, that's a lot of the team fight damage for Malibu gone. So unless Fi gets another
No
pick,
one can hide from my
favorable here for Malibu on the defense.
And it can come through with Buck going to go down. You had some assistance from the line up front, which made it a little bit more easy. And there's another pick. Takes the corner. Finds somebody. This is Fi's game. And continuing to gain value. Unbelievable job. I just can't. I can't even look at it.
I'm gonna steal the words off of said. Who is this guy? Who is this man? Come out. Somebody come collect your Widowmaker. Okay, well, Wannabe collected the Widowmaker. All right. There's the quintessential caster curse coming through. It's all about the Widows, man. We picked the right story to set up Rich here. Now Wannabe's gonna have the insight. So, Comically Large Crosshair. They gotta play a little bit further back. If anybody plays on the fringes here, that's an opening pick. And there's still a lot of ult available towards the end. It's gonna open up the red one.
Are there to shut it down, but Razor still gets through in the mix of it all, takes it back, and is now at 35%.
Buck's coming up to a Dragon Blade of his own, though, so Razor not getting as decisive of a fight win as he could have means that this fight, where you dumped your 3 impact ultimates as CLC, is very expensive. Unless they get a pick off of either Fi, who has been getting them all day long, or Comically's amplification matrix early, you should look for this fight to probably be Malibu.
Amplification matrix lead again. Buck in the back gets defeated. The stun is there. It is true and will land. Now it's 60% climbing. Comically Large Crosshair is in a stellar position to bring this into that final fight territory.
Yeah, the caveat to that was Buck actually had to get value with his Dragon Blade. Not so much. Jumps in, gets stunned. It's a tail you see on Genji Blades pretty commonly if you are not careful. Now we're up towards 80%. This is basically last fight territory. A pretty dry fight, at the beginning at least, for both of these teams. So, once again, looking at these Widowmakers, you can already see Fi keeping his eye on Wannabe there, but with Buck going down early, this is a rough recontest for Malibu. They don't have the same kind of damage at a 6v5.
And it needs to happen now. Some kind of action pressing forward. He gets helped out in the back by Fi, so everyone is in sight. The Flux is being led though by Odd on the lower ground. The pilot and no one on the hook with this connect trap, mitigating some damage to Icy to try and stay in the fight. Barely able to get the fuck to 2 health! Overhead as they are risen into the sky. It is blue up high and then dark brown when you're in the ground. After that shot, I continue to pop off your HP. Being drawn out of this fight, even though it's switched back here for Malibu. Cedro's actually going to come back as well to give some assistance, and this is a take back at 99%.
That fight was an absolute mess from both teams. I mean, realistically, Malibu probably shouldn't have gotten that cap, but good work from Buck. He actually applies a lot of pressure to Fi in that fight, so he's not as much of a threat as he was before. Still a rally coming in for CLC against basically nothing for Malibu outside of the amplification matrix, which can buy some time, but unless you get a pick with it, it's not really the fight-winning ultimate you're looking for Malibu.
No, it isn't, so there's going to have to be a lot coming through by Malibu without any other assistance, as the amplification matrix is going to be online. You've got Wannabe getting the Infrasight to at least see where that backline Widowmaker play is, but Ultraviolet going down. Fi finds the pick, taps the grapple, getting some shots decently onto that front line shield for Fish Kick. Wannabe getting a double their own, continuing to apply pressure as Cedro and Odd on the front line continue to dominate here, and Malibu, despite only having the amplification matrix, which, by the way, wasn't even used, managed to keep that point.
And it all comes down to just the slightest positioning between Widowmakers there. We were watching Fi, and he was hunting for Wannabe's head that entire last fight. He got just a pixel of Wannabe and decided that he needed to go for that Widow 1v1. But Wannabe, he plays a more passive angle where he can just dump damage in onto the objective. He helps his team out in the fight. He doesn't even need to hit headshots. He does anyways, but he didn't need to. Just getting the consistent damage into the team fight keeps Malibu on the objective and gets them that first round. It's going to be a switch up now. Tracers coming out from our quintessential hit scan. This can very much be a completely different story as we're going to roll out with dives.
Yeah, you go from Widow v Widow to TVT, and it'll be interesting to see how well this synergy is with these dive-centric type compositions. The biggest adjustment, though, is the Zarya and the Wrecking Ball dynamic between the two.
Yeah, Wrecking Ball as the off-tank is not something I'm hugely in love with. It really depends on how much pressure CLC devote to Odd, right? Are they going to get distracted by him like it kind of seems like they are right now? Or will they go for excellent picks like Fi going for Wannabe?
And that pick is great to lead with. Cedro gets another on to Zolik, and this constant pressure by the Winston is really holding value, and there's honestly not enough coverage from Icy to keep these individuals alive. The melee comes through for the third. Cedro just having a field day right now, with both supports from Malibu safely on the high ground, and they're doing a stellar job here maintaining this front line.
Yeah, and what this composition from Malibu can do more effectively than the dive CLC are running out with is isolate 1v1s, right? Because when you run that Zarya, you were really looking for like a full committal dive, right? And Malibu are on a dive themselves, so they don't have to opt into that. Now you're going to switch over to D.Va for Icy, so he's going to be applying a lot more peel unless he just gets slapped Ultraviolet, you monster.
Taking a nap on the balcony, getting some sun as that engagement continues. Cedro has the final range ready here, is more than willing to wait until that last final moment to just really dislodge a number of members of LCF, or correction, CLC on the high ground. And with this Genji blade available, but very low in health, has to play more passively, can't afford to get picked off with Ultraviolet, going to get a counter onto Razor. You heard the play, but it didn't do much. And this is another cleanup here by Malibu, even though a few percentages were gained by CLC because of this sporadic positioning to collapse onto CLC entirely.
Yeah, the flip there actually is pretty much a saving grace for Comically Large Crosshair, right? Otherwise, we'd be looking at like 60% right now for Malibu. That would be devastating. So while the Primal Rage was good to stall out for a while, the flip there kind of ruins the time stall coming out. Blade's still available for Buck. He should be able to wreak havoc in this fight.
And going in immediately with it, does get bioed in the room and has to draw back immediately. Will not get anything out of that and has to play cautiously. Odd gonna force that minefield though onto the point in case anyone tries to apply pressure to this position. Cedro also as well trying to maintain the high ground with that nice assistance of the pulse bomb in the back to get the pick onto the support. Still have Ultraviolet though maintaining this nano boost until necessary and finally going to unleash it to secure this fight and will lead it into this final fight territory where Malibu is really demonstrating how just 7 days ago they are playing vastly more superior.
Yeah, and the ults really there kind of just counteract each other. Poor Comically Large Crosshair, they had the Nano Winston, and that was all they really had. But a Rally, the armor, tickle damage, pretty much negated there. So now you're going to have a lot available for CLC. But even if they cap this point, they need to do it relatively inexpensively or risk giving it back over to Malibu early.
Well, and the fact that you have those 2 picks coming out early, you've got Fi on the point. This is going to be an instant swap over into the 99 overtime, which was really well played and just caused, well, take a nap, Razor. But still, the fact is it's a long way to go for CLC, but they can still do this.
Well, shout out to CLC there, right? Razor gets slept, and yeah, it looks mostly just funny, but the tanks are immediately there. Decod and Icy don't waste a second of time, because if Razor gets picked, that's the map done and dusted. Fi's gonna be able to probably get a pick on the back now with this Pulse Bomb, or he can just stick it onto Seadro. It does go into the bubble, but Seadro's at least forced to use the Prime.
Yeah, and losing that is not what you want from Malibu. And yes, Razor is out of the fight here, and here comes the follow-up. Wannabe throws the Pulse Bomb and gets another. This will be Malibu cleaning up, taking it back. The overtime going to shred away. It's not going to be enough. The dash is there to try and attempt an overtime, but it is not enough. Malibu coming out and showing off how they are going to bring the vengeance from their last week engagement with comedically large crosshairs.
Comically Large Crosshair.
I know. It's
they said
it was going to get it sooner or later.
it was gonna happen eventually. But, you know, shout out to Malibu, right? At the very least, even if the rest of this series doesn't go their way, they don't get 2-0'd this week, right?
Yep.
So they're playing much better. And a lot of that is because of Wannabe, sure. But Razor, you know, I gotta put a little ping there, right? A little question mark next to his name, because he was the win condition in that fight, right? I said if he got picked early, it would have been devastation. Sure, he got peeled for the one time, but you only get peeled for so many times when you're in a position where you're about to die, right? So I maybe like to see Razor play a little bit more conservatively. Neither Genji is getting like a ton of use out of their blades just because Comically Large Crosshair and Malibu are so drilled at this point in negating the enemy Genji blade. And you can see CLC especially are ready pretty much anytime Buck pulls out a blade. But Razor, it feels less like Malibu are prepared for Razor's blades and more so like Razor is just stepping his toes a little bit too far over the line right now. I think if he can reel that in, then Comically Large Crosshair can definitely look to take this next map.
Definitely overzealous. I would 100% agree.
And it's not like he's feeding his brains out or anything, right?
No, not at all.
He's playing mostly fine. It's just these tiny little moments that make the difference, right? If Buck doesn't kill Razor there, there's still at least another fight for Comically Large Crosshair. They don't necessarily win that map, right? They don't necessarily extend it even. But because he gets picked, there's no chance, right? You lose the Genji blade, you lose your only hope in that fight outside of a miracle from either Fi or Icy, right? The Genji blade, the Dragon blade is just much more consistent.
And it looks like we're going to be going into Volskaya Industries for this next map. And I mean, again, it's not like I will piggyback off that to say that yes, that Razor has not been completely out of line in some respects with that aggressive play.
I don't want to dunk on this man here.
Yeah.
He's okay.
But I mean, again, it's those micro adaptations that need to come out here to not allow Malibu, who again, even with that one player difference, is really causing a different type of challenge to CLC. And Wannabe has been coming in very, very well into this group of players and rotating out Icy. And you made the comment even when it came to the Widowmaker. It's just kind of that mindset where it didn't go solely on the 1v1. There was a lot more presence and focus to work as a singular unit with the team versus trying to be that one-pick wonder that really started to snowball something. So I like that dynamic.
Yeah, exactly. And both dynamics are viable, right? You can go for the Widow 1v1. You can go for just the straight up team fight. And to Fi's credit, when he won the Widow 1v1, which happened multiple times on Ruins, Comically Large Crosshair easily won the next fight, right? So it really just depends on, or depended there, on whether or not Wannabe got caught by Fi, or if Wannabe was able to actually play more of the conservative angles, right? We are going to go on to Volskaya Industries now. Seems like Fi's going to go for the Widowmaker yet again, at least on point A. I think this is a great call for him. I think he was a monster on the Widowmaker first time around. Wannabe doesn't seem to opt into that 1v1 though. So we're going to have a little bit of difference in styles going into this first objective. And the question I have is, who are you going to jump on right now if you are Malibu, right? Because this is an all-in kind of dive. You look for a hack, you isolate a target, you shut them down. If you can hack Icy, he becomes a viable dive target. Same thing with Razor, right? But outside of that, Fi is really the only one who you can look to take down. So where is Fi going to be playing, and does he get caught out?
Fi looking to be in that hallway with the windows to get a decent angle as the dive comes through early by Cedro, already getting some decent damage and forcing the few that were on that high ground from CLC down to the lower position, maintaining that side room where the mega pack is, but Wannabe's looking to potentially hack it and actually looking for a deeper flank in the backside as Cedro causes some aggression alongside Buck, getting a very great pick onto Razor and still surviving through it all. And now with the assistance, Buck transitioning with Wannabe to get a great flank as well onto Fi. This is a very well-coordinated play by Malibu. You have at least one tank down from CLC, but it's just still not going to be enough, even with that mega pack near.
Yeah, and now CLC, they're mostly stuck in this room, right? It's very safe for them, but they need to actually get onto the objective, and they're running into a 4v6, essentially.
With that, now pushing out, and the fact that you've got Fi on this Tracer gives that numbers advantage to try and compete since there is a quick re-engage. Buck gonna go down in the flanks. You've got Fi picking off potentially the backline, but the support is there to secure it. Oh, the single bullet, the Bionin comes through, and that's a reset.
So I want to give Malibu some credit, and then I want to question him a little bit. First off, I gotta say, the way they set that play up was excellent. They shoved Comically Large Crosshair into that room where they could not get out, took every position, forced them to stay, and then isolated Fi, which is exactly what they needed to do. But then they didn't really sit on the objective and force Comically Large Crosshair out of that room while they had a numbers advantage. Now I'd like them to play much more aggressive.
Oh, the execution fell short the first time, but this Dragon Blade execution could just be a billion times better. Triple kill with it, focusing now that supercharger to prevent the boosted damage. This is a Soul Centaur inside of the Nook, and they are not going to be able to survive.
Great aggression, classic Nanoblade from Malibu there. GG go next for Comically Large Crosshair. The problem for the defense is when you're going next, you're going into this EMP from Wannabe, right? So CLC, you should know this is online. It's been 2 fights, right? The Sombra should have it up by then. So the question is how do CLC set themselves up around this and ensure that Razor and Icy can stay safe from it, right? Because if they can stay safe, they can use the Gravitic Flux and the Dragon Blade and still manage to pretty comfortably take this fight.
Ooh, the Gravitic Flux comes out really early and gets hacked. Can't do anything. Cedro gets the execution with the Primal Rage active. 3 in total are hit. 4 there with Razor included with the EMP. This now is Malibu completely raiding this point, forcing all members of CLC back, and the swaps come out. Icy has to get out of the Wrecking Ball, but is obliterated the second touching the point. This is going to be an instant take by Malibu. The momentum is there, and CLC is definitely baffled.
Bro, Wannabe's Sombra is kind of clean. I'm not gonna lie. Not only did he get the on-screen cancel of the Gravitic Flux onto Icy, who pulled that out defensively, right? Great work there from Wannabe. Then he goes out onto the objective, EMPs 4 out of the 5 remaining members. Razor's the only one who isn't EMP'd. And then Wannabe, with the hack-off cooldown, shuts Razor down in his Dragon Blade with just another basic hack. All 6 members individually of Comically Large Crosshair got hacked by Wannabe that fight one way or another. And that is just so much ability and resource downtime for CLC. It's so difficult to come back from a fight like that. And Malibu just roll through the objective. Now they got almost 4 minutes in their bank.
It was surgical. Precise
exactly
play that just absolutely destroyed CLC from the inside out, and I cannot wait to see how that continues to go into this. Now on the defensive side, how will Wannabe be able to affect this type of momentum that CLC is going to want to push in? And the fact that Fi is holding on to this Widowmaker, I feel, is a little bit of a risky play.
On the attack, it's a little bit more difficult. To be fair, into the dive defense, it should be somewhat easier, right? Because Fi can actually look to pressure Cedro and Odd as soon as Odd uses his bubbles, right? Because then there's not a whole lot keeping those tanks alive, and that allows you to take space a lot more effectively.
Oh my
unless you
goodness.
just get 3-man anti.
Oh my, it has to force out the Immortality field so early. The hack comes out in the back as well, causing some really difficult time here for DCOD. And just, at this point, you've got this rotation now from CLC, and they have to stick into this. You've got Razor diving in as well, getting a lot of damage on the front, but it's being heavily mitigated from Odd on the front side with Azaria, and consistently keeping these shields up. Another triple Bionade, both DPS are low. The numbers are thinning, and you have now Malibu doing a stellar job on this defensive side, keeping the pressure, and you've even got Haruhi just saying, I give in, I will take the reset.
And a little bit of a dip there from Cedro. Right now, though, Ultraviolet is just giving Comically Large Crosshair a sunburn. It's pretty fitting considering he's on the team Malibu, realistically. I like the on theme there. And now you're walking in here, if you're Comically Large Crosshair, you only got the amplification matrix. You can take one angle with that, right? But then you're probably coming up against a Primal, a Blade, a Nano on either one of those characters, and Razor's already gone!
There's that overzealous play that we commented on earlier, just constantly going too far forward, and the fact that you've got Malibu responding to this, getting a pick is critical. And Buck goes down as well, so it makes it an even exchange. The Genjis are not there, the pulse bomb in the back by Fi actually gets fish cake, but in return, you've got a nano-boosted Zarya, whose charge is absolutely insane, instantly deleting Fi with, oh my goodness, vaporize.
Yeah, and shout out to Cedro, the very angry monkey there, just casually picking up a 3K with his Primal. I mean, man, Malibu just looks so friggin' clean right now. Comically Large Crosshair, they're struggling to adapt, right? You could see them apply a lot of pressure to the tanks, but what good work from Fishcake and Ultraviolet to just dump resources into their tanks and then peel back so they're not vulnerable themselves. Now the EMP Blade, Graviton, all available here for the defense. Already one gone on the entry yet again.
And they're in such a small area, the EMP most likely won't be forced out here because it is a numbers advantage here for Malibu. The grab comes through, the damage is also extremely high. You've got the focus from Wannabe on the support since the shield could not block overhead. Cedro gets another follow-up, and at this point you've got CLC really just throwing out what they have to at least try and survive. The supercharger now gone. Icy doesn't have the flux. This is a devastating position to be in.
I get what Icy was going for there. He thought, okay, they've overinvested the grab, our spawns are close, our players are back, we can take advantage. But I think he gets either stunned or hacked out of his gravitic flux there, so it just doesn't work out. Now you're looking for a miracle. Razor with the blade, Fi with the bomb. Who's gonna find something, or CLC will probably get help?
Well, Malibu is playing a little reserve here, allowing this getting 2 ticks because there's a lot of focus in the back. Fi gets an exchange here, goes down with their own pulse bomb, and the dive comes through now from Cedro. Nearing this primal rage, it needs to be obtained. There's the nano to ensure that it is gained. With a dragon blade from Razor, does take down Odd, but is slept. Take a nap. The hack is there as well, but nobody gets the focus fire. There it is, Ultraviolet coming through saying, I gave you the sleep, and now I'll put you in the grave, as this is another hold here from Malibu. 30 seconds to go.
Yeah, 30 seconds, 1 tick remaining. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but basically the only win condition CLC have is kill Buck immediately. And probably Odd too, I'm gonna be honest, because if either one of them gets an ultimate, that's gonna be more or less donezo. As there's a comp swap coming out, it's a full brawl onto the objective now for CLC. They're gonna try and plant themselves and stick.
Green means go as the Dragon Blade comes out from the opposing side. Malibu is eviscerating those health values, getting deleted up front. CLC is being just broken down piece by piece. The grab will be thrown in the back line to lock down any remaining members of CLC. Malibu exerting dominance coming into this new week, and that is 2 points entering into match point.
Malibu look like the best team in this group now. I think I can comfortably say that. And keep in mind, we are now in trials. We are not first to 2 anymore. It is first to 3. So we will go to at least 1 more map. A reverse sweep is possible for Comically Large Crosshairs. But if you are Malibu right now, you feel friggin' great, right? Because not only did you get, anytime you start a series off 2-0, you feel pretty good. But you don't on the people, or are dunking on the people who 2-0'd you last week and knocked you here into trials in the first place, right? So the morale has to be so high right now for Malibu.
And they're going to want to ride this wave. And
Oh,
CLC
yeah.
is going to absolutely need to take a moment, because we're going to go on a break right now. This break has to be everything for CLC to come back into this third map and obtain this reverse sweep. They're fighting to keep their integrity from this week prior, but Malibu is really becoming a force to be reckoned with. So don't go anywhere, friends, because we will be back with this third map in just a moment.
So you queue up for Overwatch Ranked, only to be greeted by this, which then leads to this, and oh no, Reinhardt, what are you doing? The solution? Elo Hell pickup games.
Hey, you know what? Just
Oh my god, it's huge! Oh! Kill!
Let's go.
Open to players of all ranks and most platforms, Pugs give you the chance to experience competitive Overwatch as it was meant to be played. Competitively.
I need help.
I'm with you.
Shoot.
no way, dude.
Go. Nice. Good call.
Players set their icons to indicate the role they want to play, then two captains pick their teammates and draft the most competitive teams they can. You can also take part in our pioneering learning event, Coached Pugs. To take part, join the Elo Hell Pickup Games Discord, and be sure to read the Pug Guide and FAQ. Good luck, have fun, and we'll see you in-game.
shatter. Let the bodies hit the floor. Uprising Academy at 95%.
Right now with Hydra building up to this Bear Barrage so quickly.
Oh!
And asking.
Double kill in the back with the pulse bomb from the high ground. Aerial assault with that line.
Impact se escucha de abajo gritar campeón a Sky Foxes.
Holy cow.
And after 42 consecutive losses, the Shanghai Dragons get their first win.
8 teams enter this weekend.
Oh no, Reinhardt, what are you doing?
We've got a clip with minimal information. It's time to break it down. Speed, 25%. Go. Figure out what this man's SR is.
Keep fighting till it's for sure lost.
Winnable! Hello and welcome back, friends, as we had that lovely quick break to see now who is going to take this third map. Will it be a reverse sweep by CLC, or will Malibu be able to crush it out of the park right now? Possible. We're going to Hollywood, and it's going to be a beautiful sunny day downtown, as we're going to now see who is going to be taking this map. What do you thinking CLC's got to do?
I just love how much you sound like a radio host, Rich. It always warms my heart. But I also love right now how Malibu is looking. And honestly, if you're Comically Large Crosshair and you're coming on to Hollywood, right? We've seen a lot of different looks from both these teams. What I would like to see from CLC right now would be the Ashe, right? I feel like they're applying a lot of pressure onto the tank of Cedro and Odd right now, and I feel like the Ashe just does that better than the Widow or the Tracer that they opted into on Volskaya, right? You can certainly make either of those picks work, but you're looking more for like picks on the periphery rather than like full-on tank pressure, and those picks have been few and far between, mostly coming out of Fai's pulse bombs or Fai's Widow shots, right? So if you're gonna opt to destroy the enemy tanks, pick up the Ashe to do so. And already, as we head into Hollywood, our third, hopefully not final map of this series, Fai is rocking that Ashe already. But we do see it's going to be mirrored, so for the first time, we get what's quote-unquote standard mirror for this meta.
And, I mean, we kind of talked a little bit about it on the break ourselves. You know, you made the point about the Ashe, and it's a good thing that we're looking to see that come out. The biggest reason is because it's kind of like saying you've got like a 50-50 type of comp or like a 75-25 type of comp. Just go 100%. Just go big or go home. Just take it right out of the start.
And it seems that over on the Group A stream, they're going to map 5. So make sure y'all got your double monitors out. Ooh, okay.
Make sure you got your double monitors out and keep an eyes on Fai, because that Widow shot's at least going to give some advantage early. And maybe we'll be able to see our game go to 5 with an early pick like that, as Fai comes out consistently with this Ashe now, putting a lot of pressure on that high ground. We've got Icy getting another pick onto Odd. This is now a 6 versus 4, potentially going to be against 5 here with now the regroup. But a pick comes out once again onto Buck. And now you've got Malibu in the driver's seat and pressing onto this point.
Yeah, this is the CLC that I really wanted to see, right? I mean, Razor will get picked there at the very end, but doesn't really mean much of a difference. Ultraviolet's just going to stall as long as he can. And that's the Comically Large Crosshairs that I've been waiting to see, right? And that fight, admittedly, solely happens pretty much because Fai comes out on the Widow and gets an early pick, right? But he also switches back over to the Ashe, applies a ton of pressure, and Malibu stay a little bit too long on that high ground. So we're going to move on to point B, play around the general store and the saloon. You can already see Odd taking up this high ground with Buck. My question is how heavily are you going to commit to removing them from that? It seems like Comically Large Crosshairs want to actually fight for that high ground pretty heavily. No ults really coming up other than amplification matrices. Ooh, Odd's going so low though.
Yeah, very low. And you've got Malibu playing underneath this awning in a very close position, but that's where Fai's going to get a lot of that dynamite damage, and these supports are having a challenging time from Malibu to keep alive through all of that damage, and this is a complete and utter shift.
And that's 2 fights in a row where I feel like Odd overstayed his welcome and forward positioning. Gonna keep an eye on that. Wouldn't necessarily pin it on him yet, but just something to keep an eye out for. This next fight, pretty much no reason Comically Large Crosshair shouldn't take it, right? They're gonna have basically every ult in the book, especially if it's an extended fight. Hopefully, though, they can keep some ults in their bank. You want to make this fight as cheap as possible, but still wait.
Yeah, the Flux going to come out in the back. You've got now both rallies expended. Ultimate starts to stack. You want it to be eco-friendly when it comes to how much you're using, but there's a lot going into this. All of CLC is managing to force out their ultimates. Will get the cleanup. Fai is the only one that's going to be able to keep something since they've not generated the bomb. But there goes the bell, and that is a team kill here on Malibu.
Well, and shout out to Buck. He actually gets the opening pick there, I believe, and forces more ultimates out of CLC. They knew they were at a player disadvantage, so if they still wanted to win that fight, they had to do it. But, I mean, realistically, it's okay that that fight was as expensive as it is. You've got 5 minutes to take the last point here. So you play the next fight as Eco, get both the Gravitic Flux and the Supercharger out of Malibu, and you're still feeling pretty comfortable about this map if you're CLC.
Well, CLC also feels a lot more comfortable, especially getting that unfortunate spawn, disadvantage from Malibu after the entire team kill came out. The point just reached it, so those numbers advantage forced his position back even further. Now, Bob going to be unleashed by Fi up front near where the payload is. The payload's actually going to shove it forward to bypass some of the shield. Icy going to get lifted up here from Odds Flux with multiple members with that Immortality field going to keep all of CLC alive. Bob in contest by Wannabe, but there is really no value gained outside of just one pick onto Razor. That could be enough to try and force a reset here, and it's actually going to be enough to get CLC to draw back.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the Eco fight I was talking about, right? Fi used the Bob early, but look at him. He's already 60% of the way to the next Bob. Early pick onto Wannabe. Gravitic Flux coming out, and a bunch of ults coming out afterwards. Now you should be able to finish the map if you're CLC.
Ooh, Razor getting stunned though, almost.
As long as he doesn't die.
Yeah, right. As long as he doesn't die. He needs to survive, and he does. And the blade is available, and it comes out unsheathed onto Malibu. The damage is true. That blade will slash and takes out Buck in the mix. No Dragon Blade for you, Buck. With this payload continuing to press on to that very important person's spot as it arrives just in time.
There we go, and what a blazing time from Comically Crosshair. 3:45. They took what? I think it was a total of 4 fights and won 3 of them. The only fight they lost was basically an Eco fight. So that is the Comically Large Crosshair that we expected going into this map, right? This is the team that, if you're looking at Group B, right? CLC, Malibu, Regen, Noble, Revive, Karasuno. You would expect Comically Large Crosshair to be one of the 2 teams that makes it back to Contenders actual. These are the X3rd Impact guys. DCOD, in my opinion, is one of the best tanks in all of Contenders, much less North America right now, right? And with how well Fi's been popping off, the history behind this roster, you expect great rounds like that from them. Now they're going to go over to the defense. I want to see just as clean of a defense as they had on offense.
And our producers even talking about that might have just been the fastest Hollywood completion time here, which definitely says something to just only further your point in regards to just this team roster in and of itself for CLC. But as we go into this, it's a completely different type of composure from CLC, and I'm surprised that we haven't seen this earlier. Like you said, like now they're committing to it, and it's speaking volumes.
Well, and I don't think that really Malibu 2 should be too worried about the change in pace there, right? Like, sure, you can make the argument, oh, we just got steamrolled, but realistically, you can call that a snowball, right? You got picked early. From there, it was just a roll down the hill. So coming into this, Malibu, I don't want to see them any less confident than they have been. I'd just like to see their tanks maybe play a little bit more carefully.
Yeah. Needs to be very careful when you're going against a team that's going to be picking it off so carefully. And now with this CLC position moving up the stairway, you've got a nice defensive position. Wannabe does get a pick onto Fi though, which is big entering into this corridor. There is so much with so little health value, and honestly, it is favoring CLC slightly now because the rally comes out first, but Fishcake also gets their own. 3 support ultimates, but you've only got Haruhi holding on to the amplification matrix, and honestly, that was a great hold on both of those ultimates and not over-committing that into that narrow corridor.
Bro, what a ridiculous ult charge from literally everybody in the game. That's what happens when you're all clumped up, man. Gravitic Flux already from Icy, and this is kind of what I was talking about with the tanks for this team, because DCOD and Icy, they've been together so long and they're so good. DCOD set that whole fight up with a halt that pulled most of Malibu around the corner and forced earlier resources to be committed. So in the extended fight, it went to 3rd Impact. Now they're going to have the earlier blade, still holding on to their amplification matrix, and DCOD's outpacing to that.
Oh no, the dynamite into the halt blade. Unbelievable cleanup and synergy. You talked about DCOD, and that halt made it worthwhile.
My man's DCOD out here with the halt. Nasty, making his DPS look like gods there. Fi's gonna have Bob too, but The good news is, for Malibu, you didn't use anything that fight, right? You're going to come back in. You're going to have a supercharged blade of your own, which against just a supercharger coming out from Decod should be far superior, right? So we are getting a little bit worried about the time bank at this point. It's past 2 minutes, but Malibu should feel comfortable going into this fight unless they lose somebody early to the amplification matrix, which is what just happened.
Absolutely, and the fact that Ultraviolet is out of this is going to cause a very, very just complex rotation here in the back. You've got yourself separated. Malibu is going to need to give some coverage here for Ultraviolet to try and regroup from this side angle, but that's where CLC is going to reside and try and get another staggered pick.
And the win condition is set. Get to the point with all 6 people alive and press your ultimates, Malibu. That's what you got to do.
And that push is coming through finally now that all 6 are here. You've got that high ground maintained by Buck. Bob going to come out from both sides, but the Flux is going to be led by Ice first. Does get the rise and fall on to 3. The Supercharger comes out up front by Malibu. Cedro assisting in the back line. This blade from Buck also finds value, especially, but gets instantly halted and killed in the small room. That is not Buck's friend of a space. With almost 2 ticks obtained, but this rotation by 5 allows an opportunity to get a decent flank. The dynamite damage is there, but the fact that you coach gunned into the middle of the team is not going to give you any sort of advantage. And now Malibu has managed to take this point and transition with just over 3 minutes into the streets phase.
That fight was almost winnable too once Zolik used the rally there. I'm really happy that Odd decided to commit the Gravitic Flux, because if he didn't, you run the real risk of actually not taking point A there. So good work from Odd. He's going to keep his team in this map and push on forward. But you're not going to match Old Habits, Comically Large Crosshair's time at this point, right? And Razor's gonna have a blade for this fight. As long as CLC can wait this rally out, they should be able to come back in and take this.
But there is a lot of aggression from Malibu to utilize this rally. If a pick can come out, which is only going to be the Immortality Field so far, Buck takes down Decod, and now a Razor blade comes through in the back with a decent amount of damage, but a nice attention to detail in their positioning from Malibu to not stick too far forward. Rubber bands back and forth so that they can find a recontest onto this, with Wannabe getting an opening. Despite Wannabe going down, there was still enough value gained for this consistent push by Malibu.
Are Buck and Wannabe just living free in the backline of CLC that fight? That's kind of what it felt like happened there. Buck gets 2 picks. I feel like, in all honesty, he probably should not have been allowed. This payload, there's still a good chance you can get an alright time bank, right? And Fi is going to have a really tough time re-entering on this Widowmaker at this point in the map.
Yeah, interesting pickup here. Again, the sidelines are going to be difficult as it is in these doorways, especially when you've got the double shield. Buck going to come out with that now blade once again here, gaining it so quickly from the previous fight. Minute and 30 seconds, the dash reset consistently coming through, and this is going to be a nice checkpoint. And again, that time bank, which is still going to be quite decent, and there's also a little bit of a spawn stagger here that you can have Malibu take advantage of.
Yeah, and good work from Zolik and Decod there. They know they're dead. They just run straight at the cart, because worst case, if they die slowly, they maybe stall the cart. Best case, they die quickly and actually get to respawn. I like that Fi's switching back over to the Ashe. I think he probably should have been on the Ashe the whole time, not gonna lie. But I like that he's on it now, because in these enclosed quarters of third point, you're not going to get value with the Widowmaker as consistently as you are with just the Dynamite. Buck needs to be a bit careful. Gets out of dodge zone. Not going to get picked immediately. But he's playing with fire with his positioning right now.
Yeah, and the fire is really hot for how low that Buck is getting. It needs to be looking for some water and just consistently getting picked very, very low. You need a friggin' oasis to try and survive that kind of damage coming through, as you've got 2 minutes now. Bob gonna come out on the front side from Wannabe, solidifying a position on that back ramp, and some decent value comes through with Wannabe now getting some damage onto Zolik. 1 support down, solely relying on Haruhi with that amplification matrix being dropped. But the fact that you've got 2 coming down, Cedro and Wannabe, allows this to potentially equalize. Dragon Blade from Razor, ultimately going to be negated by that Immortality Field in the back from Ultraviolet, and Cedro's actually going to force onto the Striking Ball. Wants to get the numbers value. The supports come in with 4 kills. We don't need DPS, friends. We can handle this ourselves, and we'll take this round completion with still over 60 seconds worth to use.
That last fight was kind of a mess. I'm not going to lie to you, Rich. It was a bit of pandemonium. in that last fight, I feel like Buck might have been, you know, where is in the previous fight or 2 fights before, he was living rent-free in the back line of CLC. I feel like once he got away like 3 times in a row on sub 50 HP, he might have just taken up residence inside the mental of CLC right there. But match is certainly not over. And although, yeah, oh no, you let them cap, you're still working with over a 2-minute advantage if you're comically large Crosshair right now, right? So it's not that big of a deal. And when we go to time bank, I always look at how first point went, right? Admittedly, for comically large Crosshair, they probably won't get that opening pick onto Wannabe again, right? But as we roll out on the attack for Malibu, it took them 3 minutes to get A the first time. What is your adjustment that you are going to make, Malibu? Because a lot of your rotations, you were losing players. You were losing straight up resources before you could get anywhere of value. So where are you going to actually take value away from third impact? What are you going to force early here to give yourselves that edge?
Yeah, I mean, comically large Crosshair will play forward, and yes, it is going to have to be a drastic shift here for Malibu to make sure that this 1 minute and now 20 seconds is used to its fullest. Buck does get the teleport out here from the Symmetra and rotates back to that Genji to get that extra little bit of gap close, but there's a lot of damage still being funneled in this choke point. Icy gonna maintain the high ground position here. Nice hold to come out with the accretion combination, but there's no follow-up. You don't have CLC playing far enough forward to get out of position and being collapsed onto. But again, we find all of Malibu residing near this high ground position. The stairway could be the option, but it's actually going to be an outside rotation with Buck really being uncontested and finding some contestability onto the back line. Fi manages to divert away with the coach gun. Razor takes one down, and this is now a very difficult position. You're in last fight territory and need that full 6 regroup and Wannabe barely skirting out of there.
I liked the start from Malibu. They had a slow, methodical push, forced Icy off the high ground without over-committing and getting punished to this position. But now you're out of time to do that again. You cannot take the same kind of advantage. You need to rush onto the objective. And Icy, more than likely, is going to free farm them from up here.
Yep, and continuing to get those spears on the low ground along with the accretion stuns in the back. Ultraviolet having a lot riding on their shoulders. The immortality field is now gone. The AoE healing needs to be true with that assistance. The flux overhead by Icy uncontested will knock up multiple members. Odd gonna go down in this, only a few seconds remaining, entering into the overtime. CLC is in a dominant position to take this away, but Puck still gets the dash reset, managed to take out a support, and now gets the second. Ranger into the play, going for the third, trying to get the damage onto the tank line as another comes up onto Icy. What's the quad, gets it onto Haruhi, and there's enough to bring this into the overtime. Fi goes down. Buck has everything in the sight line and will manage to regroup with Malibu to transition into the overtime to the streets phase.
Bro, the Buck differential coming on in right now. This man is a nut with the dash reset on that last point. The problem is he did have to use Blade. So while, yes, you get this first point, you get some payload progress, Supercharger Blade is what you're dealing with from the defense. A lot to play against Malibu. You have to be so careful tiptoeing around each and every one of these ultimates and just ready to collapse on Razor when he charges in.
And Cedro's gonna lead with that supercharger and rally as well. I like that it was early. You've got Fi, though, getting the supercharger out of the way and taking down Fishcake. No rally going to be giving any assistance to Malibu. Bob going to give some also great crossfire as Razor with a blade of his own. Even though it's going down by Wannabe, Fi is going to be there with that lovely Butler to continue pumping out damage as this round completes with that payload not reaching just past that dry goods store. But it's still a distance to be proud of with the amount of time that Malibu had.
Not worst case scenario for either of these teams, realistically speaking, because CLC, they're going to have plenty of time to get the payload past that in theory. And honestly, I want to once again just give shout out to Icy because he played that first fight, or not the first fight, but the fight that took us into overtime where Malibu actually got the objective. Icy actually played the beginning of that fight really well. He started off by forcing out resources on the high ground from the back, and once Malibu started hugging the wall, Icy rotated down, got the gravitic flux, and retreated around the corner where he could not be punished even on a sliver of HP, and then he got a ton of value. I believe he even got the pick onto Odd there. So Buck had to clutch and pull out that Dragon Blade. Without Buck, there was no way Malibu get that. And even with Buck, you still had to use Blade to get it. So you had nothing else in the bank for the next fight. This is all where it comes down to, though, now, Rich. How do you adapt on the defense? Because if... Okay, Wannabe, come on. Buddy, you can't get picked this time. Okay, he's messing with his team. He's messing with them. He was like, don't worry, guys, I got it this time. No, he backs up.
And you can see Fi go into the Widow just when you saw Wannabe in silence, then immediately went back, because it's just like, all right, you're not gonna get picked off by me the second time around. And with the pressure through the choke point now, you've got some high ground maintained by Malibu, but they instantly going to drop. They're not going to continue to stay up there for the time being. Only about half of the team, specifically more so Odd, along with Fish King up top. Cedro getting very low up front. Needs to be careful. The kinetic grasp from Odd, though, mitigating a lot of the damage to get the extra shield, which is causing a lot of difficulty to work through. Wannabe barely survives in the back line. Support line doing a stellar job. Ultraviolet forces out the immortality field up front to keep Malibu in this fight. But again, 3 minutes, a lot of time. CLC is playing this long reserve game.
And Haruhi is outpacing Ultraviolet to the amplification matrix. This will be what CLC can take the objective with, and then you need to retake as the defense.
As the defense continues to hold, you've got Ultraviolet getting an early pick onto Razor. That's a great advantage. Fi peeking the corner, getting hit by the dynamite and taken down instantly. Cedro gets the halt on the front to pull him out into sightline and gets the takedown. A regroup has to come through for another attempt by CLC.
So you don't really hate how that fight ended if you're CLC right now. Razor getting picked, very bad. That ruins the fight that you could have just pretty much won the map with, more or less. But Ultraviolet committing the amplification matrix at the very end means you don't have to contend with that on the entry. There's a lot else you do have to contend with coming out from Malibu. I'm gonna be real. They've outpaced to everything, and here comes the Dragon Blade for a bit of
Oh my goodness, with that dash reset mid-air, you have Buck finding value, and it commits both ultimates, but you still now have quite a stack from Malibu to compete going against CLC, even though CLC still is going to have a lot going into this next fight.
Yeah, Halt, Gravitic Flux, Dragon Blade. There's not much you can do if you're CLC to survive that one, right? Wannabe actually on a cheeky little flank with this Bob here. This can be very dangerous. If Wannabe gets spotted before he throws out the Bob, he can just get collapsed on, and that could be the point A going over.
And with the dynamite coming through, there's the damage. Bob gonna be positioned. Wannabe getting overrun by the Brigitte. Does manage to escape and comes out on top. The damage is enough. The rally is forced by... Oh no, Zolik is gonna lose it. Oh man, you don't want to see that. There's still a lot of ultimates to be had here for CLC, but you really would have liked to have that rally in this next engage.
And this is the fight that matters for CLC. If you can't win when you've got 4 ults and the enemy team only has amplification matrix, you can't win the map. There's no chance, right? And even if CLC takes this, if it's too expensive, they might lose the ensuing fight and not get the payload far enough. This is playing on a knife's edge right now. No one can die to this amplification matrix.
Oh, you've got the amplification matrix up front and the solo flux on the back line of Ultraviolet, but nobody could find an angle onto the support to get rid of it. It's being drawn out with 40 seconds left. Fi going to throw Bob in the back with the supercharger, getting the boosted damage. Razor gets one onto Buck, which is critical. Buck no longer here to get that blade since it was at 75%. Razor in the back trying to compete against Wannabe. There's no coach gun available and gets the melee to take down another. Here comes CLC with this 24 seconds remaining to clean up and transition into the payload phase, but they are not out of this yet.
The discipline from Razor and Haruhi there is going to make all the difference. One overtime fight is what determines if this series goes on to a 4th map or if Malibu win it right here, right now. If you can live just a little bit long, Malibu, if you can stall just a moment, you're going to have so much to work with. The amplification matrix and the blade from Razor could shut this down early.
Razor looking for a side position in the narrow corridor, seeing who he can find value to. As Odd's gonna lead in with the Gravitic Flux. Here comes the dash into the center, into that immortality field, the dynamite as well, but the rally and also the Dragon Blade from CLC comes through and starts to clean up. There is gonna be more than enough damage to wipe the board of Malibu of this lovely desert scenery. With this Wild West going in their favor, the bell shall ring. CLC is going to reach this checkpoint, and no one from Malibu can come in sight quick enough to compete as we go into a map 4.
And you know what? I've been picking on Razor. Malibu's been picking on Razor. But in that fight, he is the exact Genji his team needs. He waits patiently for the amplification matrix to draw out resources and then goes in with the blade, gets the necessary cleanup to keep CLC alive in this series. And that's the thing about Razor. He's not as flashy as your Tyos, your Bucks, whoever else you want to name as flex DPS, right? But he does play with his blades very well for his team, and that makes all the difference in that last fight.
Well, and I mean, another just interesting dynamic to this is we were talking about, ourselves kind of going into this, how Malibu was struggling against CLC the week prior. And it was like, Malibu's really looking right now to at least just take a map away from CLC. And the fact is that we've had that swap. And now finally CLC is able to take this map and try and use that momentum, that confidence booster from claiming this map and carry it into these next two, because there is still a tall mountain to climb. And to be fair as well, you now have Malibu saying, all right, friends, like, we're going to really need to step up right now, because CLC didn't take that with great ease either. Their first attempt was very good, but the reform by Malibu on that second attempt and their coordination and, again, just positional patience was really, really stellar.
And you can make the argument that CLC not win the map, but get a really, really good time bank because of one pick, right? Wannabe goes for the ult charge at the beginning, Fi punishes him, and from there it's snowball, 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 eco, and then a snowball, right? So CLC, you're in this series still, right? But with how close that map was, despite the very comfortable time bank advantage you had, I don't think you're suddenly thinking, oh, guys, we just needed 2 maps to warm up. We've got this in the bag now, right? No, I mean, you still got to play every fight tooth and nail, but I do like the adjustments from CLC that we've been seeing, right? They're playing more for resources. They're playing more around the tank battle, which is where I think they really have the advantage, right? In Decod and Icy. Not to say that Cedro and Odd are slacking at all, right? But I do think Decod and Icy are comfortably ahead of those two, right? There's been some odd positional errors from Odd. I'm not loving where Cedro is putting his superchargers either. They seem very vulnerable and quickly eliminated by Comically Large Crosshair too. So as we move forward in this series, the tank battle is what I want to see Comically Large Crosshair focus on if they're going to take this.
Yeah, I 100% agree. There were a couple good times that Cedro was able to, hide it in a decent position, especially with how Cedro coordinated the halt pulling out CLC into that open space. But yes, there were more often than not those, superchargers that were not in an advantageous position. And you had Fi able to pick them off instantly.
Yeah, now we're going to go on to Route 66 here. And Route 66, this is going to be an interesting one because I think that you could very much, if you are either one of these teams, if you're attacking, right, go back to that Winston Zarya look that we've seen a couple times, right? And on point A, I actually prefer the dive attack, right? Because I feel like what ends up happening if you go double shield for attack is you kind of get stuck on the cart and all the high ground advantage goes over to the defense and you just get torn to shreds while you're desperately trying to move the payload, right? Whereas if you pick the dive attack, you can contest the high ground more effectively while juggling yourself on the payload. And as we come on to Route 66, it's going to be Malibu on the attack. And it does seem like they're going to be starting with that dive attack there.
There you go. I mean, honestly,
there we go.
Because again, we talk about, how the double shield, it's a huge momentum shift. And yes, I would agree with the fact that you've got, on the attacking side, the double shield going to be not as beneficial, I think, to how CLC wants to play. And you also have Wannabe coming out on this Sombra potentially. We don't have full confirmation yet, but that's going to be something really to keep an eye on because that has been a critical role, which we just saw earlier in this matchup between these two and dominated over their enemy.
Yeah, my eyes are on Wannabe and honestly, Ultraviolet, dude. I mean, last time that Malibu ran this composition, Ultraviolet was hitting some sick antis. I was trying to combine sick and hitting and it didn't really go well.
Antis!
He's not sitting on anything, although he could just, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that. I was trying to do the transition. It didn't work. Wannabe's looking for a hack, though. That's basically what this first fight depends on. He does get spotted and forced out.
Yes, indeed. Has to regroup near where that Mega Pack is. Icy gets an early pick onto Ultraviolet, though, which is a great lead on this defensive position, forcing off. And now going to look for a reset here. Buck's going to play patiently near that small... Ooh, and another pick onto Fishcake as well.
And I really like where CLC have set themselves up. So they put the tanks on Big Earls because you can heal them from a distance with Haruhi and Zolik, right? And they put the supports back and are using the Ashe to kind of cover for them. It's so hard to dive this little cluster because you have to get around or get through the tiny choke points in the tunnels. And it's so hard to dive the other cluster on the high ground because they're just going to get so much peel and they're so dang tanky.
Yeah, and Wannabe is having a really tough time to attempt going into a coach gun, a stun, a play, a sleep, any of the sort. And now with Cedro on the front side with this Winston getting pressured down to the low ground, you've got Ultraviolet sticking underneath, making sure to keep both tanks alive, but there's a lot of, divided attention. The Bionade lands onto that high ground in the back. Fi barely surviving in the Immortality field, but the Raging Fists of Winston will definitely take you out of position and going to collapse onto the remaining members. And you just see this juggle. I mean, my goodness, taking him to the skies as the pick finally comes through. That's 2 minutes still remaining with Malibu going to reach this checkpoint.
And that was world-class juggling from Cedro, yes, but also world-class discipline from Malibu, right? I said it was difficult to dive the supports. What they do is they soft dive the tanks, don't hard commit, and then once they've gotten the payload to the point where they can actually dive closer, they go for the supports, collapse completely, and invest some cheap ultimates to get her done. Now, they've nearly got the Blade online to go into this, working up to so much, honestly. It's going to be an expensive fight for Comically Large Crosshairs to actually hold on to the objective and stabilize on point B.
It is a challenge, and with this consistent applied pressure from multiple positions, Wannabe in the back looking for an opportunity to try and collapse onto either Fi or also Haruhi. Does get the hack, manages to get out though since there was some re-attention, with Buck going immediately for the follow-up but can't get anything out of it, and the Flux is also going to be committed in the backside. Quite chaotic between the two teams. I think a little bit of a mix-up in ultimate usage there as Odd now comes through to lock multiple members down with this grab in the back while Razor pulls out the blade. Doesn't get much, but the fact that the team follows up from CLC allows this to be a hold for that payload just underneath that bridgeway.
Man, I'm glad Wannabe probably has a stronger mental than me, because if I was playing that Sombra, I would be like, why didn't the Baptiste die? I hacked him, you had Blade Buck, what is going on? But a beautiful whip shot, I believe from Zolik, or it could have been the coach gun from Fi also, displaces Buck, and he used his dash, so he's not able to actually convert onto that kill, and then the Immortality field can actually come back up, right? So now you pretty much have to invest EMP to win this fight if you are Malibu.
With this patient play by Wannabe, you've got Cedro being the aggressive front line in the back, does get the pick onto Fi, and that's a couple players down for CLC. This dominant pressure forward is going to allow both of the ultimates, the EMP and the Dragon Blade, to be maintained while Fishcake continues to climb here for this rally, and they're in a good position, Malibu, to reach this next checkpoint.
I'm gonna have to eat my words on that EMP. Cedro is just pulling out a dominant Winston performance right now, and CLC, they have to walk out of a choke point into an EMP Dragon Blade if they want to contest. That very rarely goes well.
Especially when you've got a little bit of a divide right now to try and go into this fight. CLC can't take this one position. But there's the quad hack from the EMP. 2 members already down. What a cleanup here. I feel like Buck didn't need to commit that Dragon Blade on top of it, but I think it was just more so of insurance to get to this next checkpoint. The few meters remaining, the final picks come through. That is going to be a very dead Razor, and that will be checkpoint reached.
Yeah, and Buck committing to the Dragon Blade there was probably the pre-fight shot calling, right? It was probably, hey, we use EMP Blade this fight, right? So the fight starts, Buck Blades. Simple as that, right? And Wannabe was a little bit out of position with the hack, had to use the translocator to get in. So it wasn't necessary in theory, but it's just good teamwork for him to throw that out. And Malibu, you're not hurting too much coming into this next fight. You're still going to have grab and a rally to at least get ults out of CLC.
And with this team moving forward, there's a lot of assistance with that rally pushing forward. The grab comes through. So many members. There is so much damage onto that grab. And what a huge response to it being thrown out there.
And Fi switched over onto this McCree to try and stop some of the dives coming out. But honestly, even with the stuns, I'm not seeing that's going to work. Now he's going over onto the Sombra. So Caesar's got to be a little bit more careful. He's going to get hacked where he can get dumped.
Oh my. Yep, instantly dumpstered in the trash can with that blade coming out from Razor to force back any others, and that's going to be an instant drawback from Malibu to make sure that they can recover from this, but I'm still just baffled by how fastly Cedro is vaporized.
Ooh, and I love this pick from Razor, man. An OG Torbjorn player switching over to the Torb now. That makes Buck's life so difficult. Wannabe's not going to have much fun either. It's going to be a lot more difficult to find the hacks because you get interrupted by damage.
Oh, the shield comes out onto Buck, though, with the blade. It's going to get hacked, but the fact is that there's still some value with the auto attacks. The dash reset isn't there, but it can come through towards the end. Here is a quad coming through, and just throwing these shurikens into Icy on the Diva. Will get the D-Mech after the hack comes out with a lovely melee. Buck just about to get all 6, but you've got Ultraviolet joining in the mix. That is a round completion with 1 minute and 37 seconds on the bank.
So I stand by what I said. Torbjorn normally makes Sombra and Genji's life harder. That being said, it's more so in the neutral fight and less so when Buck has a blade available, right? And just chucks himself in there with peel from a projected barrier from Odd and the entirety of his team diving in alongside him, right? So if Razor had gone for that switch 3, maybe 4 fights earlier, it probably would have gone better. Obviously, Razor had Blade on the Genji, so you're not going to swap off when you have Blade on the Genji in current meta, because reminder, this is not the live patch. This is instead the patch where right before it. So Genji has not been nerfed, which is why you're seeing him so much.
And it still holds value, but if you take a look here on the I love just seeing Razor kind of show this. I don't foresee it happening, but I mean, the Echo would be a very interesting dynamic, because Malibu right now, despite having the more difficult time pushing through that middle and ending phase, they played still very well as a whole against CLC, finding value. So with this, you know, dive-centric type of composition on the defensive side, keeping Wannabe on this Sombra is going to be really, really interesting. How actually you're going to see Fi stick on potentially the Sombra as well. They're going to keep that play.
Yeah, Fi's going to go over to the Sombra. It's actually going to be mirror compositions. So for the, I think the first time we're going to see this composition mirrored to this match. Yeah, no, because earlier on Lighthouse, it was one team, it was Odd bringing out the Wrecking Ball, which was not the mirror there. So this is going to be very interesting into this mirror. How are the tanks going to survive? Good bubble there from Odd prevents the hack on the Cedro. That could have been the fight done and dusted.
Yeah, and it would have been another opportunity for CLC to get an early advantage, just like we saw with the pick with the Widow in the map prior, and the fact that you had that barrier was critical. Cedro going to get super low, and the fact that the Bionade lands by Haruhi ensures that the execution comes through. DCOD will follow up. Now this is still a decent amount of applied pressure on top of this gas station. Both teams trading about evenly, but it finally starts going in favor of CLC, and you've got such a high-charged Icy Zarya to make sure that nobody from Malibu is going to be sticking around.
Yeah, and this to me feels like DCOD is like, all right, buddy, you want to see how to play Winston, Cedro? I'll show you how to play Winston. Winston is a very good pick here for DCOD in general. I have always loved his Winston. And you can see that Fi really just wants to make Cedro's life difficult right now. Cedro has come alive on this Winston for Malibu. I would certainly say it's looking a lot better than his Orisa was. Not that it was a point of problem for Malibu, but Cedro is CLC's biggest problem.
Yeah, it's very, very clean going into this map, and that's exactly why they're having to force resources from CLC to handle it, and you've got the cleanup, though. These staggers are so critical for CLC to continue this momentum, and honestly, this is one of the biggest things that CLC is able to capitalize on. Once they get this avalanche, they can ride it the whole way.
Are CLC just nuts on attack? Is that what I'm getting out of the last couple of maps? I mean, they did it on Hollywood, they're doing it on Route 66 now. You can't imagine that this next fight doesn't go to CLC, right? Fi is going to be at the EMP probably. So as long as you survive CLC, which you should because you're about to be at Rally, you should win this fight.
Oh, but Buck's gonna get that barrier once again here going into the Dragon Blade, as there is a ton of ultimates committed to this, 4 in total from Malibu, making sure to stop this just a fierce pressure that CLC is applying. And honestly, even though it was very expensive, the fact that CLC has stopped in this push, which we talked about. Their aggression is so strong. Malibu could have just been able to finally get the upper hand in this.
And I gotta give it to Malibu. Whether they knew it or not, the ults weren't actually quite online yet for Razor and Fi, and pushing when those ults are just barely not online makes all the difference there. Razor, don't get picked again, buddy. Okay, he's out of there. No worries. Now Fi is in the back. This EMP should be devastating.
Yep, and on the No! Oh, no!
Ooh, it still goes off.
Oh, but it does. Oh my goodness, that was so freakishly on point. I thought it actually got off as you've got now Decon with this Primal Rage, getting some harass onto that back line of Odd. Does get to survive for a moment longer with the assistance of the supports. Both Ultra and Fishcake managing to stick very close by. Razor, though, going to get a takedown finally onto Odd after that progression. 3 minutes and 18 seconds, and you've got a reform by CLC.
Yeah, a frame makes all the difference there. Ultraviolet nearly put Fi 6 feet under sleeping instead of just the regular sleep. That's a good pulse bomb, though. This contest is still very possible.
Oh, but there's already 2 picks coming out early. That nope. Ranger says 5 bucks. Take it or leave it, friend.
Sometimes you just stab a man in the back, you know. Razor, he finds Buck looking the wrong way with the blade, and that is that. Still a pretty nasty time bank for CLC coming on in, right? And I'm loving what I'm seeing from them. They're really not giving Malibu time to breathe or set up in most of these fights. You can see how far forward they're going, too. Icy has a ton of charge. Malibu, they need to find a way to put their foot down, and Buck dying is not the answer.
No, it's not. These, like, staggered picks are just being such a problem for Malibu. They have to come to some kind of understanding that they need to play very carefully here. And the fact that, again, Icy, this bubble constantly going to generate energy for themselves to be that extra DPS at this point and keeping Decon alive. The grab on the high ground, this energy is just going to allow so much damage. And now you've got the nano boost from Ultraviolet onto Odd to just survive on this high ground. And there's so many that are low. Malibu is just really finally able to try and turn this around with this clustered fight. And there's only a few members remaining for CLC, and I'm really surprised that Malibu was able to turn that around.
Ultra freaking Violet, man, makes all the difference. Odd getting that nano, he soaked so much damage then, and had a ton of charge too, so he's pumping out damage of his own. The only reason Malibu even survived that fight. They got a monumental task ahead of them, though. EMP up for Fi. Can Ultraviolet, can you actually sleep at this time? I don't know, it's pretty tricky to do.
It is tricky to do, but it was close last time. Well, the EMP does come out, though. It's going to land. Nothing going to prevent it. That's going to be an instant follow-up here by Decon as well, forcing out the Primal Rage. Juggling as many as possible in the corner, but is going to take a nap. Oh, take a nap, friend. No more Primal Rage for you. As Buck continues to get some damage onto the front line, and most of CLC is going to have to fall out here. And there's Cedro getting the pick to delay for a moment longer to try and run those few extra seconds off the clock.
And CLC, we're a bit divided on that, right? The EMP goes out only onto the supports, which, yeah, I mean, it's good to catch the supports, but realistically speaking, Odd was still around, probably more vulnerable. Good pick there on Ultraviolet, at least, who had that nano online. So with the Nano Blade, Razor can break this fight open, but Buck's gonna have a blade of his own.
Yeah, Razor tries to compete. Whose blade will be able to prevail? It is going to be Buck managing to potentially get more out of this. It's actually an even trade of 1, but the rest of the team follow-up from CLC is not going to be there. Yes, indeed, the Raid Boss Brig will dominate up front. What a nano!
Ultraviolet's nanos have just kept Malibu's heels dug in to the very last point of this map. Now Comically Crosshair, despite how well they took the first 2 points, cannot best the time of Malibu. Now they have to go in, pray that Icy gets a really nice grab, I guess, this fight. Fi's over onto the Tracer, but, I mean, he could work up to a Pulse Bomb. If you can get that bang combo going off, this can still be a winnable fight, but you're working with scraps here, CLC.
CLC needs to be careful. You've got the Primal Rage coming out. Nice job getting that Bionate onto Cedro. Is there enough damage to follow up onto it, though? Still surviving through it. The supports for Ultraviolet are killing it right now, and even finds a pick onto Decon. Sleeps in return to bring the Winston into a nap. 60 seconds. You've got Malibu really holding strong here, and this is getting into that final fight territory for CLC.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Comically Crosshair, get all your ults and dump them into one last fight. That's your best chance of completing the map at this point.
Oh, the grab in the corner, gonna solo focus. Icy, but the Bionade from Haruhi is going to allow this reposition. What was Malibu thinking in the corner? You now have this payload able to reach the end of it. The spawns are going to have to come through. Odd has to change now to Diva to get onto the point as Icy manages to get a double. Blade from Razor will start to clean up. You've got Wannabe in the back on this Tracer, just harassing until potentially a full regroup come through, and it's not. You have round 2 completion for CLC.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, Odd. I get the idea, right? I'm not gonna say it was completely whack, right? Idea is you catch Icy while he's unaware, you dive in, you could see that his Tracer was there with him, right? I believe Wannabe was there to help Odd try and finish off the Zarya, but you don't really have the necessary charge, Odd. You were at like 40%, right? And then your Tracer's there. Icy gets the better counter grab. And with a nasty anti coming out from Haruhi after Odd already used his bubble to cleanse or to just protect himself, right? There's not a whole lot you can do with that, Odd. That could have been the map. If Comically Large Crosshair force a map 5, Odd is going to be kicking himself in VOD review later. But you can't think about that now. Malibu, you're on the defense. First point went not super great for you, all things considered here. So, Wannabe's actually going to be moving over onto the Tracer now, just sticking with the Tracer the entire time. I actually kind of like this. I think it has better one-fight potential, and because CLC only have 1 minute, if Wannabe just plays it safe, farms to a Pulse Bomb, or gets a pick early, you can basically shut down any hope Comically Large Crosshair has.
100% agree, and you've got this rotation now from Fi onto the Sombra, looking to get some intel and also potential hack value. The dive comes through here onto Decod up top with a nice bubble to keep that health value high. Seadra has to bail out of this, though, to give some assistance on the high ground and look more for some healing. Decod as well. This ebb and flow of both of these teams right now with this 30 seconds remaining is going to be critical. The fact that Fi is being caught out in the backside has to force the translocate. Repositioning as Wannabe is just nowhere near this pulse bomb, has to get it quicker and find these full clip unloads onto the enemy to get it quick enough. Seadra still maintaining the high ground, having to drop to that side position, and this is just going to be a really difficult fight, but the fact that Buck goes down is so difficult right now.
Fi hacked him. Fi hacked Buck right there, and Buck gets caught out. Now the Nano has to go on to Seadro, who needs to find some kind of pick.
Oh, Seadro does get boosted before the Bionade lands. The Primal Rage is full health right now. Getting a nice juggle here in the back, but needs some assistance on the front line. Seadro barely escaping in the back, and the supports are there to assist. The Blade comes through by Razor, but instantly Bion. Is anybody going to be able to get the kill? And it finally does. But all the while, the focus is on to Razor. Everyone from CLC will clear the remaining members of Malibu, and this checkpoint is reached in the overtime, and there is a long way to go in this overtime.
And this is worst case scenario for Malibu. Wannabe didn't get that pick he needed. Odd, sure, you're gonna have a Graviton Surge, but Fi is going to have a heyday setting up for this EMP. That should win this next fight, right? As long as Fi doesn't screw the pooch. Basically, he should be able to guarantee a win as long as he catches 4 or 5 members. Then you're looking at more ults for the next fight and a longer push.
They're so clustered together, manages to get 4. Seadro jumped out of the way with a Primal Rage, so it's a little bit separated, but the fact is that can there be enough to follow up after? Buck actually gets the Blade in the late stagger of the EMP. Wannabe throws out the Pulse Bomb as well. Both DPS from Malibu are able to clean up here despite 4 being affected by the EMP, and that payload will move no further.
You had to pull the trigger first. You had to use the EMP before anything came out from the defense there. That is the difference maker. Fi is reactionary with the EMP, doesn't set up in a more aggressive position with the rest of his team, and by the time Fi uses that EMP, his whole team's caught in a grav. There's already a ton online for the defending team, for Malibu, and the EMP just isn't the necessary difference maker. Not a bad push, though, for Comically Large Crosshair. I'm going to be honest, right? You had a minute, you got through point A on Route 66, a very full holdable map. You can take that. And make no mistake, first point was more difficult for Malibu to break through now, right? But the thing is, are you going to set up the same way, Comically Large Crosshair? Are you going to go with that 3-and-3 setup? It seems like no. They're actually just going to go for the dive defense. Just work with this composition the entire map long.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, at this point, I'm not surprised that they would want to stick with it. They've been doing very well on the grand scale of things with it, and at this point, they don't want to risk it. They don't want to take a chance because they feel that they could probably hold on this again because of how Malibu had a really challenging time in this initial point, and it's going to take a lot here for Malibu to just change the dynamic of this to push to that checkpoint.
And Wannabe still on that Tracer, man. That first fight potential, it's great, but even though Fi had a rough EMP there, his hacks have still been phenomenal. He's getting ult charged pretty well. In the more extended time bank, Asomber is better. Decod needs to survive, though. This is so aggressive from Malibu.
Oh my goodness, Decod barely alive. The support's huge props to survive through that. And also, Fi is being dumped on right now to get that any sort of charge, just being constantly focused the second in sight. Decod does get a pick onto Fishcake, but you've got Wannabe needed to take this pick onto Icy. An exchange has to come through, or this is still going to be CLC manage and dominate. Nice takedown again, but now it is 4 versus 4. Wannabe continuing to harass onto Icy on the low ground, getting below half health, needing some assistance to try and get the execution, but Haruhi gets the nano boost onto the front line as Icy is more than willing to keep the fight going. And now you've got CLC dominating and resetting with only just over 60 seconds for Malibu to try another attack.
Razor saved Icy there way at the beginning of that fight, too, because if he didn't peel for Icy, I don't believe Icy had bubbles up. That could have been Wannabe finding a ridiculous pick. Wannabe does have that pulse bomb, though, so he can do that this fight. Although his pulse bombs have been a little quiet this map. I'm not going to lie to you, Rich. Fi's going to have that EMP, too, and on the defense, it's very easy to set up for the more defensive EMPs if you want to.
Fi has to get value. The support now, Ultraviolet, is being surrounded by Fi. Here comes the EMP landing onto Fi. Finds so many. The pick, the double comes through. But if there is a quick enough kill onto the team of Malibu, this is a reset, allowing one more good, solid attempt with that EMP no longer available.
Grabs and blades, Rich. That's what it comes down to. Grabs and blades for this last fight. Sure, there's some other ults on the periphery here. Some miscellaneous ones, but you're looking at Buck, Razor, Icy, and Odd. How can they find the value? Or maybe Wannabe, he gets an opening pick. That's pretty good to start off with. Now Razor doesn't have the same kind of support as Blade.
Oh man, you've got Buck now looking to take down Fi. So with that low health value on Zolik does go down. Buck finds another. There's the triple Citro gonna come through. The grab to secure. It's going to enter into overtime. But there are still a stack of ultimates for both sides entering through this doorway. And it's gonna be really critical if Wannabe can find any value on an early pick here in the back.
It's anyone's game here, Rich. It is anyone's series. Comically Large Crosshair, I almost did it again, need to hold right here if they want to go to a map 5. Razor needs to clutch. Icy needs to lock everyone down, set up his Genji, play as a team. CLC, you're so good at doing that. Just find the right moment.
Oh, Razor got low. It might be picked off in the back. You've already got Fi and Razor gone. That's going to be a lot. Oh, Decod is going to take down one. There's the second, though, by the tank lineup to continue competing against it. The primal range is going to come out by Decod. They want to bring this to a big map. Wannabe gets the pulse bomb, but it's not going to be enough. There is far too much damage coming from CLC on this defensive hold. Overtime is going to be shredding away as long as these final members are obliterated off the point. The staggered characters come out. You've got the Wrecking Ball, the now Doomfist, and Lucio. Everything imaginable. Malibu wanted to secure it, but it will not happen here. Route 66 will be taken by CLC, and we're going to a 5th map.
Who the hell needs a blade? Not Comically Large Crosshair. I'll tell you that much. Razor. He was the win condition in that fight. Cedro knew it, and he harassed the Genji of CLC there. Razor wasn't anywhere near the grab that Icy threw out. So Decod says, you know what? I'll do it myself. What did they used to call primal rages like that? Primal blades, right?
Yeah.
That's basically what Decod does there, right? He goes up to the grab, just smacks around all the people staying put, and keeps his team alive, not only in the map, but in the series. We're going to a map 5, Rich.
You know, we were talking about it earlier where we were, saying, hey, like, we see Malibu playing so well. Also, if you want to take a second monitor and pull that game up, well, we're going to have a map 5 ourselves, friends. I mean, it's been a day. We're doing a full ringer here right now. And I'm going to say we got one last break before going into this final map. It's going to be the map of Control. So don't go anywhere because we want to see who is going to be able to prevail between these two teams. So we'll be back in just a moment.
Uprising Academy, they lay down the shatter, let the bodies hit the floor. Uprising Academy at 95%.
Right now with Hydra building up to this Bear Barrage so quickly.
Oh!
And asking!
Double kill in the back with the pulse bomb from the high ground. Aerial assault with that mine.
Impact se escucha de abajo gritar campeón a Sky Foxes.
Holy cow.
And after 42 consecutive losses, the Shanghai Dragons get their first win.
8 teams enter this weekend.
Oh no, Reinhardt, what are you doing?
We got a clip with minimal information. It's time to break it down. Speed, 25%. Go. Figure out what this man's SR is.
Keep fighting until it's for sure lost.
Winnable! Hello and welcome back, friends. We are here for the 5th and final map between these two. We are going on to Busan, Malibu taking the first 2 maps, and a CLC now bringing it back 2 maps in a row. This is the climactic moment we've been waiting for, Pulsable, and I am absolutely thrilled. And this really could go either way.
It honestly could. The first couple maps, you had to feel like Malibu. They were just getting the better end of it in their DPS, right? Wannabe was coming alive. Buck was having better blades across the series, right? But these last 2 maps, Hollywood and Route 66, I gotta look at the tanks, Rich. And
Yeah.
Icy, sure. I love Icy, don't get me wrong. I think he is honestly doing very well. But the D-COD differential, dude. I have been so long on the D-COD hype train as one of the best Western tanks in all of Overwatch. Overwatch League included. I think D-COD is the best Western main tank outside of Overwatch League right now, personally. There's a couple other people you could throw in that combo, but I think D-COD is a nut, and he has been stepping up these past 2 maps. I love him just taking the fight to Cedro on the Winston. Now we're going on to Busan, though. It's back to double shield. Last time we did double shield mirrors, it was Malibu and more specifically Wannabe, now sporting that Widowmaker once again, who made all the difference.
And just to say, you heard it here, friends, clip it and ship it on D-COD for those words, because we're looking to see if D-COD can... Yes, quoted! Do tell, friend. As you've got a nice exchange back and forth here between Buck and Fi, but Wannabe on this Widowmaker is going to have a real challenge with this double shield and has to find serious angles on this. And the fact that Fi is getting a nice flank here and going to even compete against that back position is going to be critical. Haruhi up front does throw out the Immortality Field to manage the incoming damage, but Buck is there quickly to respond to remove it from that fight. Numbers advantage now going to in favor of CLC with those picks coming through. Wannabe going down because Fi is dedicating that backline harass and resource to commit to it, and this will allow CLC to start claiming the first few percentages on this map of Busan.
And great work from Fi there, right? We only got a glimpse of it, but he goes back and he occupies Wannabe and also just straight up takes the Widowmaker down, right? That fight could have gotten very dicey if CLC just fully committed to the fight on the point, but Fi occupies the Widowmaker, who had that one-shot headshot potential, and then you're just running Razor, who was on Genji, into Buck, who was on Tracer, right? In a long fight, Razor just has more damage. He's already gonna have a blade for this fight.
Yeah, and with that halt, gonna be pulling multiple members in the backside, trying to get some damage follow-up, but Razor is going to be healed quickly along with 5 by the supports from Zolik and along with Haruhi in the backside, but Haruhi's getting very vulnerable right now. Out in the backside, the Flux is gonna come out, and the rally gives some great reinforcements to compete against this. The fall from the Flux is not going to gain nearly as much value because it bought enough time to get that shield from the Brig. So many low health values on Malibu, but it's an even exchange, 1-for-1. Cedro and Odd are on the brink of being taken out. Finally are picked off, and Icy showing up and taking names with those spears. That's going to be a cleanup, 55% for CLC, and Malibu's got the short end of the stick with these late swaps.
Side note, Fi's Tracer, pretty dang clean it turns out. But honestly, Icy was the savior there. Razor, the Immortality Field had been forced by Haruhi's Amplification Matrix. Razor, in all honesty, probably should have gotten more with that blade, but Icy follows it up with the Gravitic Flux, so you're able to hang in that fight. You've used a lot, though, now. Malibu are coming in with quite the pretty ultimate econ. This next fight's gonna be rough for the defense.
Yep, hot from the Dynamite and from the Bob, and what a lightning fast turn on to 5 in the midst of it. Great reaction time to get the pick. The cleanup is going to come through. Bob is going to be expended with the supercharger. Only the 2 going to be used. Buck's going to hold on to this Dragon Blade, and that's going to carry over well, even though it's going to be 97% for CLC.
Yeah, one fight territory for CLC. You can look to play the next few fights as an econ tug of war, right? Haruhi has the Amplification Matrix, could always get a pick off that, but Fi actually going onto the Widowmaker. Both hit scans going back onto the Widowmaker. We're getting echoes of Ruins. We end the game how we started here, Rich.
Wannabe gonna get bodied.
Or that bodied, but you need a headshot, right? You need an opening pick. And once again, you can see, it's just like it was back on Ruins. Fi is going for the Widow 1v1, and Wannabe doesn't care.
Oh my goodness, and that's going to be the defining factor right now. The fact that you lose Fi's focus and harass on this Tracer is allowing an opportunity for the front line of Malibu to really dominate versus CLC, and that's critical.
And Wannabe's going to keep playing that way, Rich. Wannabe is going to find out where Fi is early, try not to die to him, and then retreat to a passive angle where Fi could never kill him. Fi realizes that, though. Gonna switch back over to the Tracer. We've got rock, paper, scissors here going on in our hit scan. But he is, the blade's going to be up. Gravitic Flux to open the fight.
Oh, halt into the Flux. There's the Dragon Blade to follow, but there's a lot of mitigation onto the Dragon Blade. Still ends up getting decaught in the midst of it with the follow-through onto the back line. There's another cleanup, and now we're starting to reach that last fight territory. But again, that was a stack of ultimates from Malibu, and just take a look at how many CLC has to take this back.
Exactly, Rich. The 2 most important ultimates are forced out of Malibu there. It's only one more fight on this map, no matter what. Either CLC or Malibu will, well, not the map, but this round, I should say. And you have to look at the bank for CLC and say they should take this. Fi is getting forced out, though. He's not getting the same kind of easy picks on Wannabe as he was before.
No, not at all. It's becoming a real challenge to try and find the follow-up, especially when you're playing near that Mega as Wannabe to stick close, but there's the pick in the back. The Mega doesn't come up in time, but the Venomine gets the pick onto 5, so it's still going to be a 5 versus 5. Razor gets stunned in the front, trying to get that pick onto the back line and does manage to get Violet. There's the reset now with Cedro going to go down, and this is CLC dominantly taking this back. Despite it being a 5 versus 5 on this point, the ultimates stacking up heavily in their favor. Nobody from Malibu will be able to contest, and now it is 1 round lead for CLC going into the second.
199, Rich. I wouldn't have it any other way. Now, CLC, they are just one stage of a control map from completing the reverse sweep. Earlier, after they got 2-0'd, it was looking like Malibu were just going to be the hands-down favorites of this group. CLC looking to prove that wrong. Still stick that they are the Contenders team. Reminder, the core of this roster was 2nd place in the last season of Contenders. By all rights, they shouldn't even be in trials, but you need to take this series to hold on to 1st place in your group and get a good start to the week and get back to Contenders.
And it is still a long road ahead with how well Malibu has been playing. It's only 1 round. There is still a chance for Malibu to take this to a 3rd. Playing this small positioning underneath that archway. Malibu looking for those early picks. You've got Decod playing a very reinforced front line with those shields, synergizing well with Icy, mitigating a lot of the damage. The nice knockback here. Decent amount of damage onto Buck as well. Having to play a little bit more reserve. Can't dominate on the front side, and you're actually going to have CLC rotate and get this point first.
Yeah, the early cap there is definitely going to favor them. The problem is they do give up high ground, though. So while they're getting percentage, they're getting slowly choked out.
And there's a nice halt, though, in the back for that dash reset onto 2. CLC is just disgusting right now with Razor's Genji play and going to take out their counterpart with the assistance of Fi's Dynamite, 21% and climbing. Malibu is needing to really focus right now.
Yeah, Razor's blades, I sleep. Razor's dash resets off just some nice halts from Decod, and that's where it's at for CLC right now, man. He is comfortably outpacing Buck to the Dragon Blade. No problems there at all. As long as nobody from CLC dies to the amplification matrix, this fight should have been easily won.
It should have been, but you can see the follow-up coming out. 2 picks already down. Razor has to force this outside position. Not going to really look to engage until there is a more massive number of individuals from CLC to compete. This fallback from CLC has to come through to allow a full 6 to re-engage, and Malibu's just going to pretty much take this, and CLC's going to let it happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point in using ultimates at that stage, right? You lost 2 members early, GG, go next. They don't get anything out of Malibu. That's the real problem there. What an inexpensive take for Malibu to actually sit on the objective, right? They're going to have 5 ults throughout the course of this next fight if it goes more than 8 seconds, right? So this is a rough retake for CLC.
Cedro hiding in the corner, does get sought out and halted into the center of it. The Dragon Halt Blade coming out with the decent follow-up here onto Razor. That's a big focus. Razor has been doing such a dominant job on this DPS line that it needs to be focused. That's going to be worth a while pick. And honestly, with Bob getting some damage on the backside from Fi, nobody's going to get picked off, and that's going to be a great hold here from Malibu.
And CLC still use ultimates there, right? The Bob and the Gravitic Flux both went out, and you don't even get out of the alleyway if you're CLC in that fight, right? Buck didn't even have, like, the flashiest blade. Oh, if he gets this pick, that would be monumental. Okay.
Oh,
he doesn't and Razor still dies, though. That's still the pick you needed.
I mean, whether it was Fi or Razor, one had to come to fruition, and it will actually be onto Razor first, and there's the follow-up onto Fi. The staggers come through. Malibu playing a dominant game on this downtown round, and they are in a good position to keep this one and bring it to a 3rd map.
Yeah, they've overlapped CLC at this point, and Razor's still sitting on his first blade, right? Buck's a 1/3 of the way to his second one, despite the fact that Razor got his blade first. CLC can't get anywhere near the objective right now. They need an entry. Amplification Matrix should allow them to actually set up for this fight, and this needs to be the one that they take.
Ooh, and Buck gets very low in the backside, just outside of that window. Managing to survive through it, though. Razor has the blade, still holding on to it. As you said, finally going to attempt with the dash in the back, but the immortality field is there, needs to be controlled, cannot manage to do so. The triple kill comes through for Razor as Icy, along with Decod, press forward to take this back. 99%, correction, 8% for Malibu. The swap comes through, and now Malibu can be in the driver's seat to try and take this back.
Razor, if you guys win this round, you are buying Decod a steak dinner, because his halt is the only reason that those picks in the blade came through. Is that immortality field nearly ruined everything, and the spacing just wasn't perfect for Razor. Now you're setting up on defense, right? But a supercharger is going to force CLC back. They have to get value out of Icy's Gravitic Flux.
Oh, and this side position from Fi is getting a lot of damage on the front line, and Wannabe's actually going to go down in this. Razor finds the value in that dash. The supercharger goes down. Buck has to find some value as the sole DPS with his Dragon Blade gets a dash into the high ground, but going to get fluxed instantly to the sky high and comes crashing down. Icy gets the double. That will be CLC in the overtime, managing to remove Malibu from this map. And you have the stragglers coming through, but it will not last long enough. The picks come out from Icy, the fist to the face. And you just, at this point, are saying a prayer as Malibu. And there's quite a bit to keep this going. Unbelievable staggers here.
Yeah, Malibu, they're going to get the stall, but they will not get the map. That'll go to comically large Crosshair.
It really, really will. I mean, I'm just more like, I have this hope of like, are they going to come back? You see the wrecking ball, and it's like, nah, friends, that's going to be it. Just unbelievable job. The reverse sweep comes through. Malibu starting out dominantly. And I mean, just seriously, unbelievable job. And we're going to actually throw to a quick break because we've actually got an interview coming up for you, friends. It's going to be with Icy from CLC, and you're going to want to see exactly how they're feeling after that reverse sweep. So don't go anywhere because we're going to bring that action real quick. We are back once again here. We just saw a reverse sweep come out between Comically, Large Crosshair, and Malibu. CLC taking it. We have the great opportunity of being able to interview Icy. Myself and Pulsable are so excited to be talking with you, Icy. I gotta say, my friend, how does it feel right now after that one?
Pretty good. It's alright, you know. Root was a little bit close, but other than that, it was not bad.
Reverse sweep, just not, casual day at the office for
Yeah, it's
Comically Large Crosshair.
I mean, to be fair, because we were talking about it even during the broadcast, that you had, exerted a lot of dominance onto Malibu the week prior to this. And, they came out really strong at the start of it. How did you kind of adapt mentally and in your communication with your teammates to really start to turn this around to say, all right, guys, we really got to kind of flip the gear here?
So basically they were just playing a different comp that we were used to.
Mm-hmm.
So after we got used to that, which took 2 maps because the first map we weren't expecting it. So they got the better end of that. And then the second map, we were not really our comms weren't too efficient. We might have been yelling a couple times, but after that, we were like, okay, so what do we do? And then it's like, we can mirror them because we're better. And then it's like, okay, let's do that. And then we did that. So
Well, and speaking of just the, you call it a skill differential. I definitely want to point out both you and DCOD, right?
Yeah.
Because in the last 3 maps, it really felt like you and DCOD came alive. You two have been playing together for so long now. What is it, like a year and a half, 20 months, something like that, right? That you two have been tank duos together. How does that impact you guys just as like a full team?
well, it just our synergy is always really good because of that. The time that we've played together. DCOD is kind of like the leader. Like we have a decent dynamic going where DCOD is basically like the father of the team, and I'm usually like I'm usually the youngest. On this team, I'm not the youngest though. Razor's younger than me. But we have like a dynamic like that, and we just like sandwich our players in the middle, and they just learn to like us and play with us.
I mean, it definitely showed. There were so many occasions, whether it was by you or Decod, that set up your DPS from either Razor or Fi, or even just how your supports were, playing around the map and working in such great tandem with one another. And I kind of want to touch a little bit. You mentioned that you were getting a little bit frustrated in comms. Your communication wasn't, as beneficial as you could have liked it to be. What do you do in those kind of moments as a team to kind of really refocus? Because I know you said Decod is kind of like, the father of the team. Is it something where it's kind of like all of you accumulatively? Is it kind of, a single figure that takes control and says, hey, like we really got to refocus? Like what allows you to decompress?
Well, we do have really good coaching staff, the same staff from last season, which
Mhm.
is Zenith, Sword,
Yeah.
Natter.
Mhm.
And after the second map, they just, well, Zenith specifically, just told us to all chill, like go walk around for 5 minutes, come back. We're gonna be on like one of our best maps coming back, so it's like, all right, we should be fine going into it. So we just chill, come back, and then he gives his little prep before the game, and then we just go into it.
Okay, well, now let's look forward, right? Because obviously, you know, speaking realistically, Trials probably isn't the place that you guys as a team wanted to be, right? You guys got
Obviously.
second last. Yeah, exactly. You guys got second in last season of Contenders. But now, at least I feel that you've taken down Malibu and Karasuna earlier. It shouldn't be too much of a difficult ride for you guys to get back to Contenders, right? But out of your remaining competition here in Group B, is there anybody you've got your eye on to maybe play spoiler, look to get that second place?
Honestly, I don't even know like the entirety of teams in the group. I'm just playing day to day. I can look,
Fair enough.
but yes, I know Revival. I've been looking at Revival a bit. It's really weird that with the meta right now, where
Mhm.
Hmm.
a lot of what's going on with like who wins, who loses, even in Contenders, is mostly playstyle. So, uh, like there could be teams that like lose the entire group, like go 0-4 or whatever, and then play us and do really good against us. Like
Sure.
that, it's a full playstyle thing, and we saw it this week in Contenders with Slept On, who
Mhm.
personally we didn't think they would go far at all, and they ended up winning the whole thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And it's those subtle shifts through the entirety of it that really can make a team. And honestly, with you and how you played today and demonstrating your ability to adapt and persevere through those types of moments really demonstrates a lot for your team and also for your coaching staff as well. And we do really want to thank you very much for your time to be able to speak to both myself and Pulsable and just be able to have that screen time here to kind of talk about what it's like to be on the other end. We watch all of you play stellar games and dominate in some respects and have your pitfalls. So it's amazing to give that feedback to the people that tune in and watch. So thank you so very much for your time, Icy. And again, for all of you that are out there that are still tuning in, we have more NA trials continuing for the rest of this week. So you can definitely find out all the information in the Elo Hell information along with our Twitter as well, so that we can post about it. So we are so very thankful to have you all tuning in. Have a lovely rest of your night. Take care. Happy gaming. And we look to see you tomorrow with some more Overwatch, friends.